West pushed Ron Oster hard enough to open a hole for Herschel Walker, and that's saying something.
So by and large, no discipline in that case. Speed Week is next. Bob Lee and Dan Patrick at 11:30. See you tomorrow.
ESPN SportsCenter is brought to you by Kendall Motor Oil, for protection worth its weight in gold.
Tim Richmond, one of the most colorful drivers in all of auto racing, is dead at the age of 34.
Speedweek is brought to you by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Speedweek. I'm Bob Jenkins. The auto racing community lost one of its most flamboyant and controversial members early Sunday morning. Tim Richmond, who was successful in both open wheel and stock car racing, lost his long battle with an undisclosed illness in West Palm Beach, Florida. Although many outside the auto racing community will dwell on rumors of drug abuse and speculate on the exact cause of his death, Richmond should first be remembered as someone who accomplished a great deal and became a very popular driver in his short stay in Major League Racing. Tim's career began skyrocketing in 1980 when he won Rookie of the Year honors at Indianapolis. That's the year he hitched a ride back to the pits with winner Johnny Rutherford.
Well, he came running over, and he patted me on the shoulder and said, "Nice job." And I said, "Thank you, get on." And he says, "What?" I said, "Get on, I'll give you a ride." He said, "Oh, okay." So he sat down on the side pod and hung on the roll bar, and I took him to Victory Lane, and I had always hoped that he would stick with IndyCar racing and maybe win Indianapolis, so I could always tell people that I gave him his first ride to Victory Lane.
Tim would leave IndyCars, though, to find great success in NASCAR. 1986 was his biggest year. Teaming with car owner Rick Hendrick and crew chief Harry Hyde, Richmond had one of the hottest streaks in NASCAR history. In 12 races, he won 6 and finished second in 4 others. Then, during the winter of '86, Tim became seriously ill with double pneumonia.
Along with his success came a lot of offers, a lot of requests to do appearances, to do endorsements, to do short films, just everything. And my nature was one that, you know, I just didn't say no.
He was in a Cleveland clinic over a month, but recovered enough to return to racing. And he won his first race back at Pocono in mid-June, giving himself and his fans a very emotional triumph.
I couldn't see the checkered flag because I had tears in my eyes. When I took the checkered flag, I knew it was the last lap, and that's why I took that extra lap. I thought all the tears would go away before I got back here, but they didn't.
He backed up the Pocono win with one at Riverside the following week. Michigan, 2 months later, would be his last. He started 25th after being found asleep when it was his turn to qualify. He finished 29th, dropping out with engine failure. He would leave the circuit again, citing fatigue in his continuing bout with pneumonia. But again, Tim attempted a comeback. At Daytona last year, he had secured a ride for the 500, but failed NASCAR's mandatory drug testing program.
When we tested Tim last Thursday, he had a problem. There's no question about it. There was a substance, a prohibited substance in his system, and he didn't have any business on the racetrack. Come Saturday, he tested again. He was clean. We got the results on Monday, and we were able to reinstate his license. The main thing is safety. Keep the guy off the racetrack if he's got a problem. If there isn't any problem, then we don't have a problem.
The dispute didn't end there, however. When Tim and his lawyers failed to provide medical records from that stay in the Cleveland clinic, NASCAR again denied the license. Richmond promptly filed suit against the sanctioning body. The matter was settled out of court earlier this year, but the terms were never made public. Reaction to the death of Tim Richmond has come from all members of the racing community, fellow drivers, and from the car owner with whom Tim achieved his greatest success.
I can just think of tons of times that he just got in a car. I remember when he and Harry went up and competed against Al Holbert's Porsche, and the cover of Road and Track said which one of these cars ran 240 miles an hour, and Tim Richmond ran faster than Al Holbert's 962, ran 242 miles an hour in a Monte Carlo, and it took 7 lanes to keep the car straight. I mean, he was just that courageous in an automobile, and he just he would have been champion without a doubt. He just, you know, if you get him, he would always tell us, he said, just get me even and I'll do the rest.
Drivers are a tight-knit group of people that care about each other. You know, we're competitive on the racetrack, but when something happens to somebody, we feel terrible about it. And I feel terrible that's happened to Tim.
He would drive a car into the corner as hard as anybody running. He would watch Earnhardt go into a corner and try to see if he could go 2 or 3 feet further. He had a total reckless abandon of a linebacker out on the racetrack. Not only that, but he was a guy with tremendous charisma. He was wonderful to his fans. He was also a trouble person, a person with a lot of inner conflict. But we all have that. And I think that probably over a period of time, he would have worked those conflicts out. And it's just a tragedy to see someone that died so early.
Later in the show, Larry Nuber will join me with some personal reflections about Tim Richmond.
Speed Week is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Coming up, Mansell masters the mighty McLarens. And Wallace wins at Watkins Glen.
There's a rough road ahead with no end in sight. Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Quaker State is quality engineered to exceed every single American, European, and Japanese car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection.
So pistons are protected from friction mile after mile. Valves are protected from wear year in, year out.
That's why Quaker State engines run strong and run long.
Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Created to slip the bounds of nature and powered by an unrelenting force within. Intercooled, turbocharged Dodge Daytona Shelby.
Get zero financing or $1,000 cash plus special dealer incentives that may save you even more.
Rough day. Sure glad that's over with.
After a day like this, you head for the beer that goes down smooth as a mountain stream. Push.
Rough day. Rough day. Your horse did all the work.
Head for the mountains of Bush beer.
Life's full of simple pleasures, like the comfort of Levi's jeans. Or had you forgotten?
Even though the McLarens dominated the last Formula One race at Hockenheim, finishing 1-2, everyone was saying, wait until Hungary, things will be different. Well, they were. On the pole was Riccardo Patrese, his first in nearly 6 years and the first time in 18 races that position wasn't occupied by either Ayrton Senna or Alain Prost. Before the race, Patrese said his opponents would have a hard time getting past him on the tight, twisty track. He led early over Senna, Gerhard Berger, and Prost. But moving through the field was Nigel Mansell. A poor qualifying effort forced him to start 12th, but he's now the fastest man on the track. Meanwhile, teammate Berger, perhaps thinking about his tire problems at the last race, stops for fresh rubber all the way around, and it takes only 8 seconds. The Lotuses carried the onboard cameras for this race. Satoru Nakajima tried not to go too far offline while passing Derek Warwick, made contact, and spun into the gravel. With 20 laps to go, Patrese's Williams Renault is beginning to go off-song. A water leak is slowing it down. Senna slingshots by on the front stretch, and it looks like it will be a McLaren win after all. A few laps later, Patrese drops out due to overheating. But Mansell's Ferrari is running flawlessly and is stalking the defending world champion. When Senna is blocked by Stefan Johansson, Nigel makes a bold move to the inside, passes both, and denies Ayrton his 5th win of the season. It was the first time since 1987 that another team, not breakdowns, has beaten McLaren. And from the enthusiasm of the crowd, you would have thought this was Monza.
Nigel, if the retainer really is $4 million, you're worth every penny of it. That was a stunning race. Tell us about it.
Whatever it is, it's not enough. I've got to say, for the first time ever in my life, that was my best race, Murray. That was fantastic. I was very fortunate, but I'm very, very happy.
But what about that fantastically opportunistic move getting past Ayrton?
Yeah, Ayrton was pushing hard. I was pushing hard. It was just a question who would get a little bit benefit of the traffic, and Ayrton was a little bit unlucky, but I was there ready to hopefully take any opportunity because I knew I had to be right with him because he doesn't make any mistakes, or very few.
I think Nigel did a good race. He deserved the win. And even if there was no problem with Johansson, maybe he would have won anyway. Maybe not. But I think he won and he deserved it.
Prost still leads Senna by 14 in the World Championship standings, but Mansell is sneaking up on Ayrton now within 8. Patrese is 4th and Boutsen is 5th. American Eddie Cheever also had a great race. He was holding down 4th place, but was passed by Prost on the last lap and finished 5th. It was his best finish since the U.S. Grand Prix in Phoenix. The win was Ferrari's 96, putting it further ahead of Lotus on the all-time manufacturer win list. McLaren is only 2 behind in 3rd place. Now, it's taken Ferrari 39 years to reach their total. It's only taken McLaren 23 years, with most of their wins coming in the last decade. Now, we've seen some great technological advances during that time, and some say that as a result, a lot of the romance has gone out of the sport. We wonder, do you think overall racing is better today than it was 10 years ago? That's our Speedweek phone poll question this week. Dial 1-900-990-9000 on your touch-tone phone if you'd like to participate in our unscientific survey. Press number 1 to vote yes, racing is better than it was 10 years ago. Press 2 to vote no, it is not. Each call costs 95 cents. Lines will be open throughout the weekend, and we'll have the results next week on Speedweek. As in Formula One, the Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race at Watkins, Glen, New York also had a surprise pole sitter, Morgan Shepherd. His first since Pocono last year and his first ever on a road course. And the Unocal bonus money for winning both the pole and the race was up to $121,600. Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace have won the last 5 events on road courses. Neither has exceptional starting spots today. Rudd begins from 8th and Rusty from 14th. It wasn't long, though, before Rudd was leading Ken Schrader and Rusty was trying to pass Bobby Hillen for 3rd. A close call for Dale Earnhardt. Here in slow motion, Dale's car suddenly dies when an ignition wire comes off. At the last moment, he darts toward the pits, narrowly missing the guardrail, knocks over some pylons, but makes it okay. He's held 15 seconds for hitting the pylons, but stays in the lead lap and will finish 3rd. Rusty had some anxious moments, a flat tire that caused a green flag pit stop. He got caught in the wrong place on another caution flag that gave him poor track position, and then nearly collected Ted Thomas, who spun right in front of Wallace as he came out of the pits. Now, this incident didn't look all that serious, but Australian Dick Johnson suffered a broken shoulder blade and dislocated knee, but he plans to be back this weekend at Michigan. Wallace was able to gain a lot of track positions when Rudd's engine let go with about 20 laps remaining. Some came in for a pit stop, Rusty didn't. And it was during these pit stops that Tony Casanova from Darrell Waltrip's crew was struck by Earnhardt. Shepherd, who led most laps, lost his chance of winning and collecting the $121,000 bonus money in this contact with the wall. Jeff Bodine somehow escaped with minor injuries when a brake rotor broke, shredding the tire and sending the car off course. And head first into the guardrail. The steering wheel and column come up and hit Jeff in the chin, but a full-face helmet prevented major injury. Rusty won after starting further back than any road course winner in modern Winston Cup history. He moved up 1 spot in the standings to 4th, 155 points behind Earnhardt, and not out of the championship yet.
We've been so close so many times this year with knocking 3 of them right off the bat, and then all of a sudden with the dry spell. I think we're back in it right now, and anybody doesn't think we are, and if things falling apart, they got news for them, buddy, because we're back and we're ready.
Well, we'll see if Rusty and the Kodiak crew are back and if they can continue their winning ways when the series visits Michigan International Speedway this Sunday afternoon. Our live coverage of the Champion Sparkplug 400 begins at noon Eastern Time. A major decision in the NASCAR silly season has been made. Alan Kulwicki has turned down a lucrative offer from Junior Johnson and will continue to field his own team next year. Alan told me the decision was based on the desire to see his own team successful rather than money. Now, Johnson reportedly offered Alan over $500,000 to sign. Who's he looking at now? Well, Jeff Bodine appears to be the leading candidate. Rusty Wallace and Nigel Mansell, both winners last weekend, ran faster during their respective races than they did in qualifying for those events. It's usually just the opposite. Kenny Bernstein explains in this week's edition of the Bernstein File, brought to you by Quaker State.
Have you ever wondered why cars qualify so much faster and quicker than they do during the race? Not only because of the traffic in the race that slows the cars down, but there's a definite reason for that. For instance, you start right here with the engine that's fixing to go into the Quaker State car. That engine is a true qualifying engine. It has all the latest and the lightest parts and pieces in it to make the most horsepower possible. That's what it's all about, is to make the power. It's not made to go 500 miles. It's only made to live 2 or 3 laps, and that's it. You also then have to attack the chassis. In normal race configurations, you may make the chassis a little softer, but in qualifying, you make it stiffer. You want the tires, the footprints, to be as little as they possibly can, light on its feet, so to speak. And then the driver, he knows all he has to do is gut it up for 1 lap. He may hang it out a little more than he ever has before because it's only a 1 lap, hold your breath type situation. That's why the cars go a lot quicker and faster in qualifying. They're hung out, ready to go. I'm Kenny Bernstein.
Cinemax in August. More movies, more choice.
When the sun shines and the temperature goes up, so does the interest rate on the Bank Midwest Weather Beater Certificate of Deposit. That's right, every day when the temperature goes up, so does the interest rate for the Weather Beater CD. So relax and enjoy the heat and take advantage of the really hot interest rates. When the weather gets hot, the interest rates sizzle at Bank Midwest. Call 829-1300 for today's Weather Beater rate. Available at Bank Midwest. Substantial penalty for early withdrawal. Offer may be withdrawn at any time.
Top drivers battling for the lead in point standings have all won races at Michigan International Speedway. They meet again at the Champion Sparkplug 400, Sunday at noon Eastern, live on ESPN.
The Quaker State 500 IndyCar races this weekend at Pocono, and the kart board will also meet to make a major decision. Should 1990 new car rules be adopted? Drivers hope so because they call for stricter safety measures, but most car owners hope they aren't.
If the rules are changed, we in effect obsolete every race car on the circuit. There's probably 70 or 80 race cars out there, and you can say from 100 to $150,000 each, so you're looking from $7 to $10 million of equipment that would just be total junk under the new rules. And I think the owners finally discovered what was happening and said, hey, we don't need this.
Now, the other players in this game are the United States Auto Club and the Indianapolis 500. No rule changes are planned there for 1990, which means that if CART does pass the new rules, the cars won't be legal at Indy. If you're an IndyCar fan and want to hear more about this controversy, join us for a special Speed Week Kart 89 Countdown to the Cup, which can be seen at 3 o'clock Eastern Time this Sunday afternoon. Phil Kruger is continuing to improve from injury suffered at the Michigan 500 and has been upgraded to good condition. Although he has not fully regained consciousness, he has been moved out of intensive care, and CART Medical Director Steve Albee tells me they are guardedly optimistic about his recovery. There have been very few new permanent racetracks built in the U.S. in recent years, but last weekend, Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas, opened its doors to the IMSA Camel GT Series. If the Nissan team got its wish, it would probably enjoy running here every weekend. Pole-sitter Chip Robinson got the jump at the start, but by the end of the long straightaway, teammate Jeff Brabham had used every inch of the pavement and then some to take over the lead. The anticipated showdown between Nissan and Jaguar never came into play. Instead, Brabham's main competition came from teammate Robinson, who battled nose to tail with Jeff early in the race. Dan Gurney's Toyota team provided the fireworks during the 75-lap event. The Eagle of Rocky Moran and Willie T. Ribbs blew and sent up some interesting smoke signals. Teammate Drake Olson managed to salvage the day with a 4th-place finish. Brabham's blistering pace was too much for Robinson, who trailed the defending series champion by 23 seconds at the finish after 2 minor off-course excursions. Meanwhile, Jaguar's best effort came from the turbo of Price Cobb and Jan Lammers, who came home 3rd. For Brabham, his 8th or possibly 9th win in 11 starts this season was a fulfilling act of retribution.
Definitely, after what happened at Portland and depending on what happens to the appeal, we felt it was important to come back and try and win straight away. So, we didn't want the Jags to get too much momentum, and, they'll still try just as hard. But it was very, I think it's very good for Nissan and myself as far as our championship hopes go to come back and win like we did. So I'm very happy.
With the win, Brabham padded his points lead over his teammate. Well, last week we announced an opportunity for you to share in the celebration of ESPN's 10th anniversary by telling us your choice for Racing Team of the Decade, Story of the Decade, Driver of the Decade, and Race of the Decade. Now, the entry deadline is September 1st, so you still have plenty of time to cast your votes. Mail your cards to Speedweek, Post Office Box 449183, Indianapolis, Indiana 46202. Winners will be announced on Speedweek, September 7th.
If you've dreamed of the perfect road, we've got the perfect way to drive it. With sure-footed front-wheel drive and 150 fuel-injected turbocharged horsepower, the 1989 Shadow ES Turbo, the new spirit of all-out performance, only from Dodge.
Double your money on new Dodge Shadows in stock. Now get $1,500 cash back.
Pronto, the fastest growing name in auto parts today. Pronto, featuring quality auto parts at lower prices. Need engine gaskets? Felpro has engineered the best quality engine gaskets available. And Felpro gasket sets include all the parts to get the job done right. Felpro gasket sets are available for import as well as domestic vehicle.
When you need to know about auto parts, ask the pro at Pronto.
There's only one driver in history who's driven a heavy metal pickup to an overall victory in a desert off-road race. Jerry Garrett fills us in.
About 40 vehicles started in front of Robby Gordon at Saturday's Nevada 500, but none of them finished that way. It's becoming painfully obvious, to the competition that is, that there's never been anything like young Mr. Gordon, who wasn't even born when organized off-road racing began 22 years ago. No matter what Gordon has to drive, he wins with it. The competition in this race had a variety of woes trying to stay out in front of Gordon's big Ford pickup. Some had mechanical failures, some broke things off the car, and Gordon's last challenger, Tim Herbst, endoed while trying to stay just a few seconds ahead. Gordon courteously stopped at the accident scene to make sure Herbst was okay before easing on in the final 15 miles to the finish line. He was, at that point, 45 minutes ahead of anyone else.
Well, last weekend, we wondered how you like your sprint car racing, with or without wings. The results, 57% of you who called said you preferred wing sprint cars, while only 43% of you voted for non-wing sprint car racing. And this weekend, for the 29th time, the best sprint drivers in the land will gather for the Knoxville Nationals. Some of this year's favorites were also around 10 years ago, as we see in this week's Dick Wallen Racing Classic. This can't be Doug Wolfgang, can it? And Steve Kinzer looked like just a child back then. Sammy Swindell was also there, but not having the best of heat races. And neither was Gary Grissom, who escaped injury in this violent flip. Tim Green and Shane Carson set the pace for the 30-lap A main. Green, number 55, takes the lead ahead of Carson in second and Ron Schumann in third. The Flying Shoe would use the low groove this night to take the lead from green. Kinzer, who drove number 11 back then too, could only battle with the second group of cars, but would win his first of 6 next year. Schumann won 10 years ago when the purse was a whopping $8 grand. Don't forget to vote in our Speedweek phone poll. Is racing better today than it was 10 years ago? Lines are open all weekend.
Life's full of simple pleasures, like the comfort of Levi's jeans. Or had you forgotten?
From Rocky Mountain snow to Florida sun, Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Mine's pushing 250,000 miles.
Quaker State engines run strong and run long.
95,000 miles and no problem.
Quaker State is quality engineered to exceed every single car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection.
This car's new. I'd be stupid not to use Quaker State.
Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Speedweek has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name.
Well, Larry Nuber has joined me now with some thoughts on the man who's been on the minds of a lot of people since his death earlier this week, Tim Richmond.
Bob, his story with all of its ripple effects is, I believe, the most difficult one I have covered in racing. As the Winchester, Indiana Speedway announcer back in 1977, I first met him, and I recall it vividly. It was only his 10th race, and he proclaimed that, "You may not know of me now, but I guarantee you soon will." Tim delivered.
The first Tim Richmond I knew may have been the most endearing driver I ever met. The second Tim was an elusive personality whose associates and social impact seemed to reach far beyond motor racing. His story began in Ashland, Ohio in 1955, a small town near mid-Ohio. Although he played with go-karts in this field, he never intended to be a professional race driver. The family business was successful. Young Tim was wealthy, charming, and very athletic. By 20, he was a pilot. Then in 1976, a friend introduced him to dirt sprint cars at Lakeville Speedway near his home. Soon his father, Al, bought him a Sprint, beginning 5 straight years of perhaps the most incredible leaps the sport has ever seen.
I thrive on competition. I mean, it's like I'm addicted to competition.
Many will tell you, despite his obvious skills, Tim's smile has left the brightest memory. His grin's influence was mystical. In '77, he became a 22-year-old rookie track champ on Sandusky, Ohio's pavement half, and he was spectacular at that most foreboding track of all, Winchester. Tim's racing career paralleled his life. Undisciplined yet achieving, life was uncharted, free-spirited, qualities that come with a risk, too. In '79, just 3 years after starting, Tim slithered down inside an Indy machine. And in 1980, this unknown Indy rookie went fast enough on opening day practice to sit on the front row. He was a natural.
I wouldn't mind being a retired race car driver with my picture on that Board Warner trophy. Might be an ugly picture, but any picture's better than no picture at all on the Board Warner trophy.
But after several serious IndyCar crashes, he turned to NASCAR. Impulsive is another appropriate adjective, although he funneled that into success. If life is a road course with everyone racing the line, Tim Richmond was the exuberant kid whose freewheeling, undisciplined style was still the fastest. As success in the Richmond legend grew, the second Tim Richmond evolved. Specialized dieting, aerobics, movie acting, all became part of Tim's persona.
Talk to Beetle about that funny car.
He claimed rock stars as close friends rather than racers. The Richmond story is not complete without acknowledging the controversy that sprang from his alleged use of drugs by NASCAR. That resulted in a lawsuit, countercharges, and bizarre statements. Nothing was ever proven, but Tim Richmond was never the same again. Endless rumors about his lifestyle circulated, again, unsubstantiated. But among us here, who should be defined as judge of that anyway? What is true is that Tim originally was very special for motorsports. He was an enormous talent whose odyssey of life details are not completely known yet. And it's unlikely that he ever imagined getting old. It's a dilemma he'll never have to worry about, like the rest of us, unfortunately.
This is ESPN, the Total Sports Network.
The opening round in the unique and prestigious International in Castle Rock, Colorado. And Bill Britton for birdie at 18. Birdies and bogeys are translated into points or deductions this week.